Hello everyone and welcome to this channel. In this series of dbt, we'll be going through multiple episodes, talking and discussing everything around dbt. We'll be also doing some hands-on. But before we can go and do all of those things, I want to start this first episode by focusing on really understanding and sharing some of the knowledge on why dbt is such a hot topic in the industry these days and why we want to be interested in and something that we should be learning towards. So first of all, even before we talk about why dbt is important and why we should care about dbt, I think it is important to really understand the background story of where we were just a few years ago and now where we are as a data experts in the industry. So prior to dbt, if you think about how we would typically do our analytics work, would usually revolve around using SQLs, obviously, and these SQLs would be written in a very complicated manner. So throughout my experience, I've worked with multiple SQL projects, and usually some of these SQL codes are really huge, right? So you would have some of the SQL codes that's anywhere from like hundreds to thousands to I've seen 10,000 rows of SQL in one singular file. And these SQLs usually contains a huge amount of really complicated nested structure. Sometimes is written for a specific database or data warehouse system, and it's such a massive headache to maintain these solutions. So usually it's not just there, right? You have the SQL file, you also have to think about how are you going to be now orchestrating all of these SQL files as well. So it's not just writing and maintaining SQL, it's also around orchestration of these SQLs. So you want to make sure you have stored procedures that will trigger in a certain specific period within your data pipeline, or you would need a specific things to do rollback and all that kind of complicated stuff. And this is, I'm just talking about data warehouse and database systems. When you build these data solutions, you're also not just building for the sake of building. The focus is always at the end, business consumers, correct? So you're building some things which is then going to get consumed by your business users. Now, your business users wants to consume that data for specific use cases. So then you also have this another area where you're building these data models to feed to these downstream consumers within your model, within your project. So now you also have to serve these different group of users using the same kind of structure that we all have building. Now you can slowly, hopefully, start to see why this could very easily get out of control. And we've been doing something like this for past many years, right? And we have variety of solutions that we've built over the period of time that we would be using to maintain this infrastructure, data solutions, data warehouses, business intelligence solutions, etc. Now that's all good, but it's such a big, massive headache to maintain that. What has happened in past few years is the dbt has came up with the open source version of this dbt solution, which is called Data Build Tool. Now, Data Build Tool has really, I would say, changed the game of how we do and think data modeling and data transformation. Previously, you would just write SQL code, and now we don't have to write the code in this massive singular structure of SQL. We can have those written down in a much more modular manner. And why is this good? Because now the code itself is much more easier to maintain, and we can really apply this best practice software engineering skill set. We as data experts, having to just focus on building the data warehouse, maintaining data warehouse, we are now slowly transitioning to more like an engineering focus, engineering mindset, because this dbt tool has enabled us to do these things, which were either not possible or very difficult to do so in the past. And not just that, right? This dbt solution as a framework also give us a lot of other things on the side. So dbt give us an ability to do things such as Ginger templating. So using this Ginger templating, we can write this modular code, which I was talking about just a few minutes ago. And we would also be able to do things like writing functions within dbt. They are called macros within dbt, but the behave and function like and function that we would typically do in a program. We could also do testing within the same dbt framework, right? So previously, if you want to do testing, it's quite complicated. It's all over the place. Now you have testing framework within your dbt. So there's many more that dbt as a framework provides, but this is just to give you a starting understanding of why people are talking about dbt. If you now go look at any company that is hiring for a data role, you're most likely going to see dbt as a requirement. This is how popular dbt is now. So now I hope I've given you the basic understanding of why dbt and some ideas on how we used to do things before and how dbt has changed how we think and do things. Now, before we kind of go into the next bit that I want to share, I want to basically cover this new title that is kind of becoming popular in the market, and it is called analytics engineering. And let me share my screen very quickly because I want to show you some slides to help you understand what this is. So you might also notice in the market these days there is analytics engineering, and you might be wondering how is it connected to dbt and why analytics engineering is such a thing these days, right? So again, we have to go back in time slightly and really understand how we used to do things in the past. So if you kind of shift your focus back to what I was saying just a few minutes ago about how we used to maintain our data warehouse systems, how we used to build solutions for our business users, and how we would build and maintain the data models that comes with it. We used to have, and we still do to a certain extent, roles such as data warehouse developers, business intelligence analysts, business intelligence developers. These are some of the roles that used to exist in the past, and I remember even having roles such as business intelligence engineers. Now, all of those roles are coming to sort of revamped into the modern era now, and you can sort of think of all of those roles coming under analytics engineers or analytics engineering. And the reason for this is because, again, dbt has kind of opened the door for us as an analyst to really do things and think in a software engineering focused fashion. And I say this because now using dbt, we can really apply a lot of software engineering best practices. So as an analytics engineer, we're not just building data models. And when I say data models, don't limit yourself to thinking you're just building data warehouses, right? You're also building things for something that business intelligence developer would do in the past. So as an analytics engineer, we're really looking at these two things now. A data warehouse and also the specific data warehouse model, the semantic layer that a BI analyst or BI developer would typically be maintaining it. Everything is sort of coming under this one umbrella, analytics engineers. And again, dbt is enabling us to do that, right? And there are news that dbt recently acquiring certain companies where they're really trying to integrate that semantic layer within the dbt as well. So dbt is not just building and maintaining data models, but it's really kind of enabling that business intelligence use cases as well. And you can suddenly see, if you have everything under one umbrella, the skill set that's required for someone to do these things would have to go beyond just building data models, beyond just focusing and looking at business intelligence solutions or semantic layer, as we would say. Semantic layer, for people who don't know, is basically, you could think of that as a layer or an area where you would typically apply business logic. Usually within the data warehouse model, you're more focused on kind of data cleansing, building data models that would be then consumed by a variety of different kind of consumers within your organization or whoever is your consumer group. Now, so going back to the analytics engineers topic, right? The expectation is becoming kind of bigger now because the analytics, as an analytics engineer, you're required to know quite a lot of things. dbt is not just, again, limited to building data models. You would need to suddenly understand how terminals work, how Git solutions would work, right? You need to really understand how to apply really good, high quality coding control structures and how to do, pull request reviews, what Git strategy your team or you should follow, how to do PR reviews, how to do local testing. You should also have an understanding of what is a CI/CD, like continuous integration, continuous deployment, how all of this fit together. That's a lot, yeah. If you're new to this, it might be overwhelming, but don't worry about it, because this is just the start of the journey, and I'll try my best to kind of give you, help you all get familiar with all of these topics, specific areas that I think is going to help you adopt dbt or learn dbt to kind of accelerate your careers, hopefully. But you can kind of suddenly start to see, right, this dbt as a tool really widens that skill set that you would typically have a bit more narrowed in your previous kind of roles, I guess. But yeah, the dbt really is a big tool, even though people might be using some of the features to limited functionalities, but there is a lot of stuff that's going on. What I've just said is really just scratching the surface. I'm not even kind of going into more low-level detail stuff. But yeah, hopefully this has helped you sort of understand what dbt is and how it sort of helps this specific title, analytics engineers, and how everything fits together. And next, I want to again kind of stay on the slides and help you really kind of understand some of the tools. If you're thinking analytics engineer, or the title doesn't really, I guess, matters. Like some companies might call themselves analytics engineers. Some other companies might want to adopt different naming title names or job titles, whatever they are. But if you're kind of thinking this modern analyst or analytics engineer, data warehouse developer, whatever you want to call yourself, if you're someone whose roles and responsibility is to look after the data warehouse solutions and the semantic layer business intelligence solution, I would say it's really important for you to understand some of the modern toolings that you should have a high priority understanding, I would say almost at an expert level, and some which is like a supplementary knowledge. And depending on where you're in your kind of career, I would suggest you would need to kind of start building up those skill set slowly. So that's how kind of you would progress in your career and be good at what you do, right? So as you can see here on the screen, yeah. So you have the 3 rows, and I see, again, without overly complicating this and confusing people, I have cherry picked some of the tools. It's not really comprehensive, complete list of tools and solutions here, but I think this covers the most of the scenarios and foundations. So if you're an analytics engineer, right, the core thing that you need to really understand and become expert at is that first row that you see here, right? So you have SQL, which is almost, I would say, is a given, right? If you don't know SQL, it's going to be very difficult for you to work with data and any kind of data warehouse database solution. So the knowledge of the SQL is a must. And you might be thinking, oh, Rahul, there is now this whole generative AI, and I can generate SQL queries using AI, etc. Sure, you can go and do that. There's going to be a lot of solutions that help you do that as well. And I would definitely, I'm definitely kind of in the mindset of, yes, we should use the generative AI to, if we can speed up our workload and deliver value to our business and our companies and our personal projects, whatever that might be, we should use AI to accelerate our work. But one thing you should keep in mind is that using this generative AI solution and just automatically one click and you now have a SQL query written for you could also backfire, because if you don't know what a good practice SQL code looks like, you don't really understand what the business use case is, you don't understand how to do data modeling. What's the point of getting this one-shot SQL code that's generated by AI for your business? you're going to be at risk of putting that code into production because you really don't understand what the SQL is doing. Maybe it's returning a result. So I would say still having a good foundational understanding of what the SQL is doing, how, you should write best practice SQL, specific functions, and AI should just be an accelerator, right, for you to do this job better. So, I go on a bit of a tangent, but SQL is very important still for us as a developer. The second here you see is the terminal. So the terminal here is really important because if you're especially using dbt Core, which is an open source dbt solution, the using of the terminal is very important because without that, without having a good understanding of using a terminal, you'll get stuck because I've seen many developers who are just making transition from that sort of like a previous tool stack is how I would put it, right? And to the new sort of dbt world. And now you suddenly are stuck because you don't understand how terminal works or, specific toolings that you need to run within this terminal. For source control, you need to use terminal to, interact with Git source control, etc. CI/CD, if you're doing, you have to use terminal. There's a lot of other things, right? So even if you're using cloud solution of dbt, I would say that still having a good understanding of terminal is super, super important. And then I would say the third one here you see is a dbt logo. Obviously, dbt is the framework, and I would say, if you don't understand dbt and if your job is, dbt, that's gonna be difficult for you. Then you got a few other logos here, which are data warehouses. I mean, you're not limited to just using BigQuery and Snowflake, but any data warehouse solutions, you should have a good familiarity with at least one data warehouse solution, I would say. You don't need to kind of, be expert at all the different data warehouses because, some of the foundational knowledge of what is required for data warehouse is pretty much standard across, multiple kind of OLAP data warehouse system. And I would say you should have a pretty clear understanding of differences between database systems and data warehouse, right? One is the transactional, the another one is for analytics workload, right? So OLTP versus OLAP. But yeah, once you understand the data warehouse systems well enough, it's quite easy for you to kind of dive into or change into different data warehouse systems. And then you have some other kind of things here like modeling techniques and, is it star schema modeling techniques, data vault, data mesh, what is it, Kimball methodologies. There's lots of these different modeling techniques. One big table is another one that is kind of quite popular and it's being used across multiple projects and companies I've seen. So, even here on the first row, again, I have very much sort of touched the surface of what is, required in here. You can already see there's a lot of kind of knowledge that is required and it's quite critical, important for us to, as a developers, to really understand this high level and also to understand how deep do we want to go into each of these subject. And then in the second area here, we have GitLab. This is really to understand how the source control works. So it's not just about, git status and git commit and git add, not just those commands, like really understanding how Git works. When you have conflicts within the source control system, how do you solve those conflicts? There's a lot of those that we need to understand as analytics engineers. Then we have the BI solutions, Tableau, Looker, we have Power BI, we have many more. Won't go into details. Maybe I'll cover it in one of the upcoming videos. Then here we have the orchestration. Orchestration is super critical. And this is something, some of you maybe already know from if you're coming from Microsoft Stack. This is quite almost like a done deal for you. We can kind of use some of the pre-made ready solution, but especially in the open source world, and if you're using open source dbt Core, the orchestration is something you would have to set up by yourself. dbt Cloud already has some of the orchestration solutions, but this is something that you will have to do it by yourself. When I say you have to do it by yourself, typically in an organization, you would have a data engineering team who would be maintaining these orchestration solutions. But analytics engineer's job would be pretty much around sort of using those templates. And then if you have a new data pipeline, you would need to understand how to write those, the orchestration pipelines. So some understanding of like this is, you see here, we're kind of going into this direction here. Yeah, understanding of some level of programming understanding. So Python, R would be pretty good, because then some of these orchestration templates, or especially in the open source world, is really between sort of Python and Java. Unless you're touching like a more complicated front-end application that's like a full stack React applications, don't need to worry about it too much for now. It's mostly just like, Python, and you would be pretty good shape if you kind of understand some basic Python. Really, you don't need to become expert. If you have time, go learn more, because knowing more programming language is really good. Because again, from my experience, I have worked with multiple developers, and I have to say the developers who are really good at what they do has some good level of understanding of programming concept, programming principles, best way to write code, understanding of dry principles, right? Don't repeat yourself. There's a lot of those software best engineering practices that comes in that is quite difficult to catch up if you don't know, and if you haven't worked with writing programming languages. And then you have some like a streaming solutions. I won't go into too much, but here it is, if you want to build ingestion pipeline, you use something like Apache Beam, and then messaging queues such as like PubSub, etc. This is very much like a Google focused ecosystem. You don't have to limit yourself. Azure have similar stack, AWS has a similar stack. So yeah, it is pretty full on, but you don't have to go and become expert in day one, right? You have to really kind of start thinking about what's your current role as requirements are, what would be the highest priority, plan your work around, and then start learning bit by bit. So with that, let's go back to what we wanted to talk originally at the start of this video, right? Because so far we've kind of gone into this really in-depth understanding and connecting all the dots before we can really talk about a bit more low-level details about what is dbt. Now, the dbt, as I've kind of described since the start of this video, is your kind of transformation framework, and this is a very high-level explanation of the diagram, right? So typically in a data warehouse systems, or any kind of, let me just call it data platforms, right? You would have a raw data somewhere sitting. You want to bring the raw data into your data platform, typically in a data warehouse systems. And that's what you see here, right? Snowflake and BigQuery and Azure and AWS, Databricks, many other. You want to bring them in because you want to store the data, then get it ready for the downstream consumption. When I say downstream consumption, this is the layer I'm talking about. Now, all of these things needs to happen in the middle, which is the data transformation, testing, documentation, understanding your data lineage, and then finally deploying something, which is production ready, right? And it's a word that I want to kind of share with you here today. Maybe some of you are not familiar with. It's called idempotency. And when we, as a developers, when we build something, we don't really tend to think this idempotency as a kind of mindset, because what idempotency means is when we're building something, it needs to be repeatable. The results needs to be the same. So when we're building a system, and the system is supposed to be 1 + 1 = 2, we should be able to run this multiple times, and the end result should always be 2, right? There shouldn't be 3 because of something unexpected has changed somewhere there, right? We should have a really strong set of principles and controls in the middle for those things to fail, right? Those are sort of the things that's outside of our kind of requirements. So we need to be considering idempotency, like how do we build a system, a data pipeline that is reliable and production ready. Like, so we always need to think about like this production readiness. Like, how are we going to build a solution that is tested pass the quality assurance and production ready. Now, dbt gives you everything, right? This is why everybody is so crazy about dbt these days. I know there are like some similar solutions out there. There is like Dataform, there is SQL Mesh. They all have like a similar framework. They have like a specific differences between certain functionalities. I'm not going to cover that in this video. We can cover that maybe in the next ones. But they all have this one goal, which is to give you this framework, right? To go and build all these systems and solutions, which is production ready. And you have all these amazing things in the middle. So now let's look at this in a bit more kind of detail level. Same as before, our previous slide here. We have the data sources. It can be coming from anywhere, really. You want to land the raw data. You want to apply dbt on top of that. You want to write SQL code, which is modular and modular and production ready. And then when you deploy, it will be kind of BI ready, right? People can consume and use the solution for whatever the business use case is. Next, I want to kind of show you this. So this is one of the slides that I have in my dbt Masterclass course, but I thought I'll bring it over here because it's quite nice and easy to understand the whole thing and how dbt fits in to this whole sort of like a data architecture. So this clearly kind of shows you, right? So we have the data sources. Now, if we think about data sources, it can be really anything. You can have on-premise solutions. You can have database systems. I've got example here, MySQL, but it can be many other database solutions. You can have like sensors. You are transmitting data, APIs, anything really. You think you want to have as data source. You could have currency API that you're calling to build some finance solution, whatever that is, right? The goal here is always at the end, you want to bring that data into your data warehouse solution, build an analytics solution on top of that, so your business can extract information from that and make business decision. And at the end of the day, most of the time is how can they improve their products? How can they improve their services? How can they be more profitable? How can they make more money, right? That's the end goal most of the time. So then the whole thing here in the middle happens. How do we do that? So the data gets landed to data lake systems. I mean, again, this is very much Google focused because it's easier. And I work with Google solutions quite a lot. So it's kind of easy for me to kind of just show you this here. But yeah, so you typically land the data in a data lake system. Now, I'm not going to go into super detail about how you would lake your data in the data lake system, how you would design a data lake system. Maybe that's for another day. So let's imagine you have the raw data coming in, like really nicely stored in the data lake, is secured, it's ready to be kind of consumed and built in your data warehouse. And typically you would land that data in your data warehouse. And then you would basically think about how you want to now turn that raw data, i.e. model that data, and how do you want to separate different kind of your data warehouse within your data sets within your data warehouse. And you want to do that because you can't, you don't want to have just one single data warehouse with all the tables in there. It is going to be a nightmare to maintain and manage those systems. And this is where like data modeling principles come into play. So you could be thinking Kimball, hybrid star schema, data mesh solutions, right? Data vault solutions. All of those stuff come in here in the middle. For the sake of simplicity, let's assume we went with like a star schema, hybrid model, and we have like a staging layer, we have a data warehouse layer, and then we have the analytic data mart layer. And now you would have, within the BigQuery, we have data sets, and data sets basically contains multiple tables within them. And you could have a staging layer where you would apply some basic data formatting, data cleansing, maybe adding additional kind of columns or making changes to your column names, etc. Then you have the data warehouse. Depending on how you want to optimize your data warehouse and your business requirements are, you would think either one big table or dim and fact model. Here, or in the mart layer, really depending on how you're designing the system. So data warehouse system typically would contain very specific sort of tables in here, which is able to sort of serve multiple use cases. So the things that you have in the data warehouse shouldn't just be for business use cases. It could even for ML use cases, right? It could be an egress to another systems and solutions. So there could be multiple use cases. And then you have the analytics, the mart layer, where it is specifically to serve your business users, where you typically connect your BI tools and solutions. Now, dbt basically sits on top of this. So if we could quickly go back to this slide here, is basically this here, right? You have the raw data, you have the BI tools, ML models, whatever. They're coming and consuming the stuff that we've built here in our data warehouse, correct? So this is how kind of dbt comes into play. So I hope by now I've covered, given you a very high level understanding of, at the start of this video, what dbt is. And I've kind of helped you connect the dots to all the skill set that you need to be a successful dbt developer under the name of analytics engineers, and then kind of showed you how dbt fits into your typical sort of data warehouse architecture. And the next thing I want to move on is to kind of show you, when I said previously dbt has two versions, dbt core and dbt cloud. Now dbt core is obviously an open source version of the dbt offering. When we say open source, it's kind of maintained by community, and there are also obviously dbt kind of people who are committing and contributing to the source system. And a lot of this here is open source. While dbt core itself is an open source, when we say open source, what we mean by that is if you want to use dbt, you're going to have to download this code within your local system, install it within your local system, maybe it's the right way to say this, and then use it. So you will have to do a pre-setup, you have to make sure everything is ready, all the foundational requirements to have dbt core up and running in your system needs to be met. So that includes things like setting up Python environment, installing some libraries, setting up, etc., etc. And you would be using this within your local machine. Now, you might potentially see some of the limitations with that, because this is now everything is within your local machine. When you have a new developer joining your company, you would need to kind of build everything from scratch, set up everything from scratch, and then onboard them. Could be complicated for certain large organizations, but if you're small enough, it's not really a massive pain. So obviously dbt also offers the dbt cloud solution. Now the dbt cloud, all you need to do really is just go to the cloud environment, you have an account, everything there is set up for you. You really don't need to worry too much about setting the bare bone dbt core stuff. It's all kind of managed for you. So simple way to understand this is sort of dbt core, you have to set everything up. dbt cloud, everything is managed for you. And it's not just that, right? There's a lot of additional features that sort of dbt cloud offers. Let me just quickly show you. I think down here. Yeah, end-to-end orchestration. So orchestration is something, if you remember, we briefly covered in one of my slides earlier when I was talking about analytics engineers. Now, orchestration can be very complicated and can be a bit of a engineering overhead if you need to maintain. So I've seen a lot of sort of maybe startups and smaller companies, even certain large organizations, they go to dbt cloud because they don't want to kind of maintain and manage some of these orchestrations. But again, to be honest, at the end of the day, it's really how you want to design the whole data platform stack. So dbt clouds give you out of the box orchestration solution, and dbt core, you have to sort of have your own, set up your own orchestration solution, I mentioned like CI/CD. If you want to have an automated testing every single time you create a pull request, for example, you have to set that up by yourself in dbt core. Well, dbt cloud, a lot of that is like taking care for you. Well, dbt cloud, since it's managed for you, is not free, obviously, and it is a paid version. So the free version, the developer ones, is sort of limited to certain features and functionalities, but the team version gives you almost all the features that you would need to kind of build almost enterprise fully stack application. Now, there is limitation you can see here in the free versus team. The free is only 3,000 models per build. So when we say 3,000 models, you want to maybe go and read a bit more detail before you kind of commit to this fully, but it's every single time you do a run. A model is successfully built, that basically considered as like a one model build. And then this one, obviously, you see is quite a bit more compared to the free version. So some of the considerations that is important for you to look into. There's a lot of like breakdown here. So if you're just starting dbt, and if you're your company is thinking about adopting dbt, I would say spend some time here, come to the Get dbt page here, and really go through this bit by bit to understand what are the features that's missing. So here you can see the developer, the free version, is missing quite a lot of things. So dbt cloud API access is missing. So if you're using developer version, it will be quite complicated for you to automate some of the things that you might want to. So you will have to resort to the paid version, because if you can't access dbt cloud via an API, you'll be limited to doing certain features like triggering certain jobs from your existing data pipelines, right? If you already have a, let's say, scheduler, yeah, so and you want to trigger through your own data stack, you would need an API access to the cloud. If you are on a free version, you're not going to be able to do that. And there's a lot of few other things here. You can see, I won't go into all the low-level details, but something you should be aware of. And then before I sort of wrap up this video, I think we've covered a lot of interesting stuff. I want to sort of cover this final bit here, which is what is the difference now, right, between dbt core versus dbt cloud. This page is pretty good. And again, I would suggest you to go through this, really understand, even if you're adopting dbt core, because I've seen I've spoken to many people, right? And again, through my sort of the teachings through the dbt Masterclass, I kind of consult many students, and the one thing I've noticed is that they are very much focused on just dbt core. Even though you are not going to be using dbt cloud, having a good understanding of what features the dbt cloud offers is very important, because the solutions that you would be building using dbt core, it is going to become complex very, very quickly, right? So having an awareness of what solutions and features the dbt cloud offers, you can either adopt dbt cloud, or if you don't want to adopt, you can already start to see what are some of the things that you might need to consider in the near future, right? So you can build some of the things by yourself if you need to, or your data engineer can help you with that. So here you have the dbt Explorer, which is not available in dbt core. dbt Mesh, again, is really popular. dbt Mesh basically is a multi-project. So typically you would have, if we're building just one particular sort of business domain, you're going to be locked into building just one project. Now, the data mesh, I have a specific sort of more detailed video on the dbt, well, data mesh, I would say, which covers some of these details around what is a data mesh, and why we should be thinking about data mesh, and how it is different from our typical sort of monolithic the structures. I don't want to go into that much detail for now. For now, just think of that dbt mesh as like having multiple dbt projects coming together working. So you can have like one central dbt project, which is typically like a core, and then you can have multiple dbt projects, which is a specific domain focused, and it's something that we can use to kind of supercharge the different domains within an organization. Then there is a dbt semantic layer. I mentioned it very early in my video, dbt semantic layer, which is a layer where you would apply business logic, right? So this is why I was saying earlier, you would need this expertise slowly, not just focus on dbt models, the data warehouse models, also the semantic modeling. And you can see none of these features are available in dbt core. So all of these are coming, well, not coming, it's already available in dbt core. So if your company needs some of these functionalities, you really need to make a decision on, which way do you want to go, dbt core, which is free, or paid version of the dbt core. And there are a few more features which is going to be existing across the dbt core and cloud. I would say it's a mission critical best practices features, and I'm really glad that dbt is sort of keeping those features available to core and cloud, because again, it's a community driven, and I think they're doing a pretty good job of keeping that balance of some of the features that's available in dbt core and also in dbt cloud, but some of those are specific for dbt cloud. And then deploy efficiency is an area I want to quickly cover. So dbt Cloud comes with a browser-based IDE, which I think is a pretty cool thing, because if you're sort of working on your local version, and if you're an experienced person, that's fine. You can use VS Code, or these days, like we have Cursor, which is again AI-driven sort of coding experience, I would say. Yeah, it works, right? But having kind of IDE in a cloud is pretty good. And then you have the visual editor like dbt Assist AI. This is pretty good. I would say there is also the another sort of AI dbt solution, which is called, and I'll just show you very quickly here, and so that we can briefly cover this. So we also have this dbt Power User, and this used to be only available to VS Code extension, but recently this is also some of the limited features, I would say, is also available in dbt Cloud now. So it's pretty cool. So you can also use this to develop some of these dbt code, dbt documentations. It's really, really powerful. I would definitely recommend you to have a look at this. So yeah, that's what it is. We mentioned the orchestration before, defer to production. It's a bit of an advanced topic. I'll leave that for now. And automated version control. So you don't have to set up all of this locally. dbt Cloud sorts it out for you. Now, again, I mentioned at the start of the video, CI, CD is something you will need to sort it out by yourself. dbt Cloud has it. Column level lineage, I would say this is a game changer. I would say sad that this is not available in core, because we only have like a row level sort of lineage in dbt core, and this cool feature is only available in dbt Cloud. And if you're kind of coming from other kind of data stack, you would already sort of understand why I'm saying this, because having a column level lineage is really important for us to track what column level details are changing, and how can we sort of go back and debug and fix stuff at the column level, not just at the row level sort of lineage. And then we have the logging and alerting, which is great, dbt Cloud offers. But I would say it's great, but if you have a data platform and if you're using dbt core, you can pretty easily just configure logging and monitoring and alerting within your system. So I would say, yeah, sure, great, dbt Cloud offers you that, but if you have a strong data engineering team, you can do this pretty easily. Yeah, a few more things. This is all I would say. If you're maybe just starting, if you're a startup and you don't have strong requirements around sort of all these enterprise ready requirements, these are not really a huge problem. But if you're a large enterprise where you must have an SSO connected, you need an hour back, you need logging, you need an uptime guarantee, all of these things, then none of that exists in dbt core. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot do that. Of course you can do that, but again, like we said, you'll have to set everything up, or your data engineering team will have to set this up for you. So yes, and some few other things here, I'll skip it because this is a bit more like, maintenance overhead, etc., which is sure fine. So yeah, I hope this has been a great sort of learning for you, or at least if you already know dbt, I hope you've kind of taken something that's new that you wasn't aware of it before. If that is, I'm very happy that you've kind of watched this video and spent some time kind of understanding my experience and how you think dbt would help you kind of get to this next level in your career, or help your company build these amazing data models. So yeah, before we wrap up this video, I want to very quickly share what is inside my dbt masterclass. And if you're interested in, you can kind of start your dbt career and learn more from the masterclass. So here you can see I have a lot of dbt stuff in my course here. I have level 1, which is very much focused around the basic core foundation of all the things that we need to know before we can go and build really high quality data models, right? So level 1 will cover a lot of information about ETL, ELTs, version control, some core concepts around CI/CD, command line basics. Then we would go into sort of level 2, which is really about like start building the dbt models. So we really deep dive into specifics about how we do dbt configuration, how we do hierarchy, how we understand all of this hierarchy within the dbt, right? You can see here we have all the low-level details on the dbt modeling within level 2. And then level 3 is really exciting stuff for me specifically, because this is where I've seen a lot of people have this specific requirement, right? So a lot of my students really love this section, because when we go and do dbt, learn dbt, it's very much around just basically building dbt model and happy days. But then when you get a job, or when you're in a company building projects, really that's not the end of the story, right? Because when you actually go and build the dbt model, you're also having to build something which is production ready, and sometimes having a really good understanding of how to deploy these dbt models to production is super, super critical. So yeah, my dbt course covers all these 3 levels. The foundation level, then level 2 is where we would basically understand all the low-level configurations about dbt models and how you would set up every single things. And then level 3 is how we get this production ready, understanding dbt mesh, some of the core principles around how you do debugging, security, etc. So all the like super advanced stuff is in the level 3. And I have about, I think, 350 quizzes in this. So every single time you would finish a lesson, you would have an opportunity to go test your skill sets to how much you understand this specific thing. And then I also, obviously the dbt masterclass is a paid version of the course, but I also have the community version, which is the dbt certification. So certification practice test, which is where you can come here and enroll for free. There are currently like 65 questions. I've really spent a lot of time fine-tuning this. So the questions are, I would say, anywhere from medium to really, really hard difficulty, where it will really test your dbt knowledge. And this is where you would come to test how much you understand and how much ready are you to go and take that dbt certification. So with that, I really hope this video has been helpful to you. And I'm obviously super excited because this is an episode 1 and I've already covered a huge amount of information, but this is not it yet. We have many more episodes coming where I am looking forward to basically setting up dbt together with you, setting up some of the projects and then build some data models together. and kind of help you really show how you would be building dbt model and some of the understanding, the basic understanding that you would need to have. So yeah, super excited about this, and thank you very much again for your time. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.